Hello, everybody. This is Nick Federoff, and welcome to this hour of the program where we talk about America's #1 hobby, gardening, landscaping, and to help you with all of your indoor and outdoor living ideas and questions, whether it's gardening, landscaping, sustainability, environmental stuff. You want to hug a tree? I'll hug a tree with you. You want to cut it down? I'll tell you how to cut it down. This is the place to be, and you can join in a lot of different ways. You can be passive just by listening. You can be a little bit more aggressive by writing in through our email portal. All you have to do is go to thingsgreen.com and click the button over there that says email, or actually I don't even know what it says. Or what you could do is come through our Facebook page when we're broadcasting live, and you can put your information in there and answer it, or you could leave your message on our cell phone, on our telephone 24/7, or call us at 1-800-405-NICK. That's what you would do to get in and on the program. Okay, how would you like to have the absolute most gorgeous, beautiful lawn in the neighborhood? You know, it's very simple for you to do this, and one of the things we have to remember is that it's all in the amount of preparation. Now, I'm not talking the H kind. I'm talking the kind that you take and you prepare your soil properly so that you have a great foundation. Like with everything in life, you have a great foundation, and your sod and your grass is going to grow for you, and you'll have such a wonderful experience. So the first thing that we want to do is that we want to water, then we want to fertilize, and we want to fertilize the lawn. We want to green it up so that we can kill it. Yeah, go figure that out, right? You want to green up the weeds. You want to green up the plants. You want to green everything up so that it'll die. Then once you got everything all nice and green, you're going to have to spray it. Now, I would spray it with a glyphosate. That's probably the most popular way of doing it. Translocates through the system into the roots, and if there's any weed seeds down there, it'll knock them out as well. If you miss something, because you're going to keep on watering, you just don't stop watering there. If you miss something, it'll manifest itself in a week or so. Spray it again, and then you are ready to remove all of that dry stuff. Now, there is another process that you could use, by the way. It's much more laborious, and it's called solarizing. But you have to make sure that it's at least like 95 degrees out for about 2 weeks for you able to do this. So at this particular process, what you would do is you would remove the sod. You would still remove that if you decided not to kill it off with a spray. So you'd still remove it. And once you remove the sod that's there, or you may want to take and rototill it in. That's up to you. You can do that as well. Anyway, so once you take and you do that process, then what you'll end up doing is you're going to take and you're going to use that stuff for a compost pile. Then you have your ground area that needs to be fortified. So that's when you come in, you fortify with your compost. You get your compost in there and it's working, it's nice, it's great, things are just happening and life is really good. You level, you contour everything out, but you don't do any planting yet because you got to make sure that your sprinkler system is in check. So you get your sprinkler system in check to make sure that you have head-to-head coverage, whether it's automatic or whether it is a manual system the way you're going to be turning it on. You know what? Don't be such a cheapskate. Spend the extra couple bucks and get yourself an automated system. This way, while you're sleeping, your lawn is watering early in the morning, say like 5 o'clock in the morning. Makes life so much easier. Anyway, so once you have your head-to-head coverage, your sprinkler system in, and you've got everything nice and cool and copacetic. Now, if you didn't take and spray it like I told you earlier and you want to do the solarization, right now is a good time to do the solarization. Solarization is when you then get a very thick milled clear plastic, and you cover the whole area with clear plastic. Of course, it's wet first. You want that area moist. You cover it up with clear plastic. You take and you cover up all the seams. You put, you put blocks and you put lumber or whatever that closes up those seams all around the edges and around the middle if there happens to be a middle that you have to cover up. Then you let it sit there for about 2 to 3 weeks, no more than that. Remember, it's got to be over 95 degrees in order for this to work. Now what you do is after that 2-week process is done, you're gonna gather all that plastic up, and it's going to be really crusty. And it's going to be really warm underneath there. And then you'll take your rake and you're going to rake it all up, and then you water it down to cool it off. After a couple, 3 days, now you're caught up with the person that has done all of the now you're caught up with the person who is going to take and has killed off the weeds by spraying them. But you're about 3-4 weeks behind that particular person, okay? So again, it's all up to you whether you want to do that or not. Anyway, now what you do is you have to plant your sod. If you're going to plant sod, you want to make sure that you stagger the joints. You want to make sure that it gets nice and leveled out, it gets tampered down, and then you water as you go along. You're going to water as you go along, and so that nothing dries out. And so, therefore, you're going to need a couple of people to help you out with this. When you do sod work, it's really heavy work, and it's hard work. So get out there and start doing that kind of stuff, and it's going to be so much nicer for you. Anyway, once you have your sod laid down, that's it. You wait 3-4 weeks. You pull up on the grass. If it's secure to the ground, you take and you can mow it. Just don't mow it too low. You want to mow it a little on the taller side. And then once you got on that taller side, life is going to be good for you. Now, if you want to see this whole process that I talked about right here, I actually gave you the Reader's Digest version just now. What you want to do is go to the Southland Sod Farms YouTube channel, or go to sod.com. I think they have them all there. They should be having them there pretty soon if they don't have it. Or go to their YouTube channel. That information that I gave out just now, I give over 10 videos. And the videos are short. They're anywhere from a minute to about 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes long. That's all they are. Very short videos. So being that they're short videos, you can get in there and you can get that information. You could watch it, and at your leisure, you can kind of understand what it is that I'm talking about. All right, let's go to your questions now.
How can you tell when a plant is nutrient deficient?
Ooh, a lot of different ways. And probably the number one way is that if it looks sickly. And how it looks sickly is usually if it's a dark green leaf and all of a sudden it's a light green leaf and you see veins in it and you see discolorations. The only time you wouldn't do that is if it's a plant that's supposed to look like that, because there's a lot of variegated plants out there. But if the leaf is drooping, it could be, actually it could be this way too. Not only could it be drooping, I don't know how you want to do drooping. It could be drooping, or it could be curled up. And we're not talking insects here, because insects will do that to the plants as well, to the leaves. You could also tell by the strength of the branches themselves. If you get a branch that's really let's say it just has good moisture to it, and you've got floppy branching on there, and it's kind of soft, pliable, too pliable. It's kind of like a wet handshake. You ever get one of those? You ever get a wet handshake? Oh my goodness. The worst things ever. Yeah, you don't want the wet handshake. You don't want that wet fish kind of handshake kind of thing. If it looks like that and feels like that on your plants, it's probably nutrient deficient. Any discoloration on the leaves, that's normally what is the problem, and that's what it is. So what I would suggest doing is that you... once you see any indication of that, then it's time to fertilize the plants. We'll be back right after this. You are listening to Nick Federoff on Gardening. All right, we're back over here. This is Nick Federoff on Gardening, and let's see, T is writing in asking, my tomato plant has white spots all over the leaves. What's wrong with it? I got to tell you something. I actually need more information than that. There could be a couple of different things going on with that being white spots. I need to know if there's little tiny holes in those white spots. If you could send me a picture of it, that would be great, because white spots is not something that is usually typical on a tomato plant. A lot of times when you have something like that, it could be something as simple as overspray from another chemical. It could be maybe you did something with liquid dish soap and something sprayed on it. Maybe when you talk, you spit spit an awful lot, and then it's slobbered all over your plants. I don't know. So we're going to have to see what that actually looks like. So if you can get a picture of it, that would absolutely be best for us. All right, my good bud Daniel is asking a question. You know what? If you look at many of my TV shows that I've done and the stuff that I've done on the news channels and stuff, we have gone to Daniel's house several times, and he's always been a champ about us coming. In fact, if I let him know that I'm coming, you know what he does? He calls the gardener up and has him come hours before we even get there to make sure everything is pristine and beautiful. Or what he does is that if I just show up, he calls the gardener and does it so that when I'm there, it's all cleaned up. Anyway, he's writing in right now. Tell me how to get rid of a raccoon. He's messing with me at the house. Okay, raccoons are really tough to get rid of because, number one, they're a wild animal. So they're tough in that particular direction. Oddly enough, probably the best way to get rid of them is to trap them and to relocate them. That would probably be the best. Now, you live over by the hills. Be easy to do. You have to get a bigger trap, too. Get a big trap. You get yourself some cat food. Put a little tin of it in the back of the cage. It comes in. You nab it, and then you take it down to the hillsides, and then you let them go. That's probably the easiest thing to do. I do that with possums. I do that, I've done it actually with raccoons in the past. So you do it with these things that come in the yard. I've actually caught skunks here. Huh, Pam? We've caught skunks here at the Things Green Botanical Gardens. Absolutely one of the most horrible experiences a person can have is catching a skunk. In fact, I have really good friends. They're Robbie and Gary, and they have their YouTube channel. And if you were to go to watch one of my Prime channel videos, go to amazon.com/V as in Victor /thingsgreen. Look for the show that we did with Robbie and Gary. And I believe it's that particular one where Gary caught a skunk, and the guy, what can I say? I guess he didn't think he was going to get sprayed. He got a bath. And you could see the way that it just lifts up its tail, and it is just sprayed him. Robbie said he stunk for months. Anyway, so trapping him, getting rid of him that way. You can probably try to use what they call predator smells. There are different predator smells, and it's kind of a natural thing. It's really kind of cool. They're usually made out of things like herbs and such, and some of them are from these predator smells. They get it from the zoo, where they'll collect the feces or the urine from different animals like lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! And they get the concentrate of it. Then they'll water it down. Then they'll take that, bottle it, you get it, and then you spray it in your yard. Now, I have to tell you, it's going to smell bad. But you probably won't have any raccoons in your yard, because what happens is that it's a natural scent that these things, it's a warning scent that they come up, they don't even have to know that it was a lion or tiger or a bear or a coyote, whatever it is. They're going to come up and they go, oh man, something's here. It marked the area and I better not come around. Now, I'm not asking you to tell you to mark the area yourself. You get this stuff and you spray it around. That does help in many, many different ways. But, Daniel, you've got that koi pond and that pond in the back over there. They will come around. They'll eat your fish. That's why what a lot of people are doing with koi nowadays is that they're putting down a fence of some sort, and then the koi are underneath the fence, or they have overhangs, like big rock overhangs, so that the fish can hide underneath so that birds and raccoons and other critters don't get into that stuff. Cynthia writes in, can you plant herbs as a mixed pot? Yeah, that's actually a really common thing. And it's really nice. You could buy them already set up that way, but it's a whole lot cheaper if you do it yourself. And as a matter of fact, this is what I would do. This is what I've done this before because it makes a really nice housewarming gift or a present for somebody. And it's pretty inexpensive. You're probably going to spend less than $10 if that much for it. So you go down to these stores that only sell stuff for $1. And then you get they're little plastic decorative containers. Then what you can do is if they don't have them already at that store that charges only $1 for everything, because a lot of times they'll have those little 2-inch containers there. You go down to your nursery and buy a couple of, or 3. Always do it in 3, Cynthia. Don't do it in 4s. Do it 1. Do it odd numbers. 1, 3, 5. 5's too many. Just stick with 3, okay? You go with the 3 different plants, and they could be 3 different basil. They could be, you could have just think of 3 different herbs. You could have a mint. You could have even though we don't consider mint necessarily an herb. Yeah, I guess we do. All right, you could use a rosemary. Okay, mint in your rosemary is going to last forever. You can take those and plant those in the ground. Okay, and you could do the basil, or you can do parsley, sage, rosemary. Or you could do sage, rosemary, and thyme, or you get the idea. So you put the 3 of them together, and you don't even have to wait till they start developing or start growing together or anything. That right there is going to make a really nice gift. And while you're there, you might as well pick up a little bag of soil while you're there. So you get $1 for the container. Sometimes you can get 2 for $1. You can get $1 for the soil mix. And then you can get, say, if they have them at the buck store, you can get 3 little tiny plants for $1. Oh, you know what else you could do? This is actually kind of a neat thing. Why don't you also do this? Get yourself a couple of fake plants or fake flowers, because you can get those there too. So you put the 3 little plants there, and just for tickles, you put maybe 1 fake flower, a little silk flower coming out. And that only you do 1. Don't go crazy making a whole bouquet or anything like that. Just do the 1. So you have the little bouquet. I mean, not the little bouquet. You have the 1 little flower, and it's just going to make that whole thing pop. It'll probably be okay by itself, but it probably will make it pop. So that's what I would do on that. Yeah, absolutely. All right. We're going to be going for a little break right now. We do have more information and ideas for the beginning and season gardener. Let's see. See, how do I send a picture to you? No holes. And I got it 2 weeks ago from Lowe's. We have a lot of rain here in Michigan, Cindy, Indiana. You know what? We have Serena. Serena, if you would take that, maybe you can help her out and answer her. She's the one who's handling all of my social media while the show was going on. Yeah, if you're thinking that I'm answering, some of the answers I do give, but most of the time, that's Serena. She's in the background. She's doing that kind of stuff. She's the one who actually makes me look skinny on TV. Although lately, she's been having a lot of trouble with doing that. She must be mad at me or something. We'll be back right after this. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back, everybody. If you're just tuning in, thank you very much for doing so. If you're just tuning on, shame on you. Where have you been for the last 30 minutes? Okay, so here's the dealio. I was talking, or T wrote in and said that there was white spots on tomatoes. So we need to figure out what that was. So then I got a message back, says, well, how do I take and get a picture to you? Well, I just realized what the problem could be. The problem could be those white spots on your tomato leaves are probably powdery mildew. It's a fungus. And the way you get the powdery mildew on there, a couple of different ways. The first way is through sprinkler systems. Remember when I mentioned, and I was being silly, and I said, well, if you're slobbering all over your plants and you're leaving spit marks all over the place, and then it turned, that's what I was kind of referring to. It dawned on me, go, wait a minute. If you're sprinkling your plants or anything gets on there like rain or anything like that and settles on those leaves, powdery mildew, which is a fungus among us, will take over the plant. You get all those little tiny dots on there. Then it can actually just spread out, and then all the leaves will turn on you. It's really kind of an amazing thing. Okay, but we have to get rid of that, right? Well, if it's being sprinkled by sprinklers, or you're getting a little sloppy and you're sprinkling the plants and you're watering them, then you have to stop it. Got to turn it off. Now, if it's Mother Nature doing it, you got to go, all right, you win. Just go ahead and leave it alone. But here's the story when it comes to doing things in the garden. I'm not a big fan of busting out chemicals in the garden. I do on certain really rare occasions, depending on what the problem is. And fungus, which powdery mildew is really difficult to control. And I don't want to start spraying any kind of powdery mildew product on there, because when you start eating those vegetables, the last thing I want you to do is have an ear fall off, or, the bridge of your nose or something. So what we're going to do instead is that I'm going to tell you to do something that is totally opposite of what I just told you to do. And that is to water the leaves of your plants. But the way that we do it is this. It's very strategic. Early in the morning, we're talking probably 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, usually no later than that, because after 6 o'clock, that's when things start to dry on the plant. That's when the mildew starts to dry. The mist that comes from the air and such, that's what's kind of perpetuating the problem as well. So what we do is that we fight mildew with water. So early in the morning, before the dew has a chance to burn off, you go out there and you water your plants, and in particular, you're washing off the leaves of the plant. Your tomato's not going to like this. It's just not. But it's going to be helpful, because you're going to take and you're going to have it sitting there. You're going to spray it. And then after you've sprayed it, you've washed it off, because that water is going to grab those little tiny white powdery mildew droplets. And after 3 or 4 days, it's going to grab them and it's going to be throwing them down to the ground. And they can't grow when they hit the ground. So just get them out of there. Now, when you're done doing this, you have to shake the plant real hard. Shake the plant. I don't want you to hurt the plant. Plant abuse. There's no room for it in the world of gardening. You might get arrested. I'm telling you right now. So you take it and you shake it really hard. So once you take it and you have shaken it really hard, this way the plant, the water has a chance to fall off of it. Now you let the sun take and dry up the plant. Do this every other day for about a week and see what happens. Just see what happens. And then maybe you are going to be in a really good spot for that plant not to have it any longer. Otherwise, you just kind of have to live with it.
I have a few houseplants that I didn't think were getting enough sun, so I moved them outside a few days ago while the sun was out. Now they look worse. What gives?
Okay, plants need to have proper acclimation. That's what they have to do. You know what? I probably just made that word up. So, nanny. They have to be acclimated to their growing area. This happens all the time, by the way. If you go to the nursery or go to a supermarket, the market, and you buy a plant and you bring it home, and it just starts wilting on you right away. You didn't do anything wrong unless you put it in the really horrible spot next to the oven or the stove, the heater or the air conditioner, whatever the case is. But if you put it in an area that has, bright light, which usually is the norm for something like that, then that's a little bit different story. So what you're going to have to do, or what you want to do, is you want to recognize that you probably did nothing wrong. And whenever you make that transition from the indoors to the outdoors, it's not a bad idea to feed the plant. fertilize it, wait a couple of days so that that fertilizer has a chance to build up and get into the plant, and then you move it outdoors, and hopefully not in full sun, because your plant was not in full sun inside the house. So you put it full sun outside the house, yeah, you could have some problems there. And I don't think we want those kind of problems. Okay, what are we going to do right now? We're going to answer this one. All right. Sulfur. Why do the whitefly, it says sulfur, do the whitefly with onion juice? Sulfur, do the whitefly with onion juice. Sulfur, do the whitefly. Mary, what are you talking about? Are you drinking again? Is that what's going on here? Take that little question or that statement and make it a complete sentence for me, if you would. All right, when we come back, we're going to look at a flowering plant that's really scrawny looking. I'm Nick Federoff. You're listening to America's most listened to radio gardening show of its kind. Thank you very much for that. Pat yourself on the back. We will return shortly. All right, we're back over here, and we are talking gardening and landscaping, America's #1 hobby. Yes, indeed it is. You know, there's some $28 billion a year that is spent on gardening. Can you imagine that? Do you know how much money that is? For the record, most of it is in my yard. All right, here's a question that comes up. I have a flowering plant. My microphone is dying on me again. I always do this. That's why we normally keep it like this. Okay, I have a flowering. Come on, Nick. What's happening here? So it keeps on going down. I should have just left it alone. It was just fine. All right, I have flowering plant. We got to get a screwdriver in here, I think, so we can tighten this up. I have flowering plants that's real scrawny. I have a flowering plant that's real scrawny looking with leaves only here and there. Do I just cut it back or dig it out and start over again? You know what? I love this because it's really a question of pinching the plant back. In fact, your thinking and my thinking are actually pretty on the same level here right now, because today we were planning on doing a television segment on this exact subject right here. What happens many times is that when you have a branch that starts growing and you have fewer leaves on it than it normally would have, that tells us one of a couple of different things. And the plant starts looking scrawny and just, not that great. One or two things can happen. Number one, it could be that it has too much nitrogen. Too much nitrogen in the soil makes a plant really leggy looking. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it makes, the plant needs to be pruned back. And what we need to do is to, depending on how tall you want the plant to be, let's say you have something that's maybe 12 inches tall and it's kind of starting to get leggy looking. If you want the inside of that plant to get fuller on the inside, then what we do is that we can trim it back to the size that you want it, or you can take selective leaves and just start pinching them back, because chances are there's buds that are behind other leaves and they're willing to grow. But when you take that apical growing point and you pinch it off and you get it out of there, it goes bye-bye, but the top goes bye-bye. It doesn't grow out anymore, and it gets bushier inside of the plant. So that right there is what you have to do to the plant. Now, only if the plant is really browning out, then I would consider and removing the plant. And it has to be like half the plant. Otherwise, work with it. I think you're going to be okay.
When I prune plants, like my birds of paradise or even the palms, it's hard to get the whole leaf off and a portion gets left behind that just sits there. Sometimes it rots, while other times it does not. What are we supposed to do with that plant part?
if that plant part, I know exactly what you're doing there. You have that, you'll have a leaf that comes out, and then you have another leaf that comes out in this direction. And when you cut it, sometimes people don't cut it far enough down. But you want to take and you want to cut that thing as far back to that next leaf, the branch of that leaf. Get it as close as you can without damaging it. Now, you may want to try this. Sometimes with bird of paradise, you can actually take and pull it, and with a real quick yank, you can take and yank that thing off. But if you do that, you also run the risk of pulling out a whole big clump of plant too. So it's 6 one way, half a dozen the other. I would suggest, if you could do this, is to just get on your hands and knees, might as well pray while you're there, and then get yourself a pair of secateurs or even a knife. Usually a serrated knife works. It doesn't have to. I guess you could use a straight blade knife because it's pretty herbaceous, meaning it has a lot of water in there. And you'll take and you can just cut it. That's all. Just cut that leaf off. Get it as close to you can. And then when it starts browning out down at the bottom over there, and it starts separating from the good leaf that is growing up and outwards, then you can just go through there and pull it off. You probably won't have to cut it off. So kind of consider that. This is a really good technique to use. Really good technique to use when you are trying to keep your bird of paradise on the smaller size or on the smaller side. Keeping a bird of paradise from growing really tall needs a lot of attention. Because, when you go to your local nursery garden center, those things are so cute. They have a little 6-inch stem. They have a little 6-inch not flower, but 6-inch leaf on there. And you're just, I want to keep this thing. It's so cute. You take it and you put it in the ground. Next thing you know, you've got yourself a plant that's 5-6 feet tall, which could be a good look that you want. Or maybe it's not. Maybe you want to keep it condensed. If you're going to keep it condensed, you have to prune more often. All right, we've got more information and ideas for you when we return. I am faithfully yours, Nick Federoff, here at the thingsgreen.com Botanical Gardens. We'll be right back after this. All right, here we go. This is Nick Federoff. Yes, indeed. Okay, looks like Mary is on a roll over here, and she's just got tons of questions. But I'm glad she restructured a sentence that we kind of tried to address earlier. And it's funny watching other people trying to answer her question, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, she writes in, read an article that onion juice, which is sulfur, works on whitefly insects. Could powdery mildew also use sulfur from onion juices? No. That was pretty simple. No, I wouldn't do that. Sulfur is sulfur. Why would you want to do that? Don't mess around with that. Mary comes back from a farming background is basically what it is, and they will use sulfur from to keep powdery mildew away on grapes. That's one way of doing it, but it's a different kind of process altogether. You don't want to use something liquid like that. Usually they don't do that when they sulfur it. They use a non-liquid formula. They use a powder formula that they spray onto the plants. This onion thing for whiteflies won't work. Doesn't work. Don't even think about using that. If you want to get rid of whiteflies, what you want to do is watch the video that I did on that. That's number one. And number two, the best way to do it is to wash the plants off. Just totally wash those plants off every single day for 30 days. Now, what's going to happen is that it's going to be a problem for you because you're going to notice after the first 3 or 4 days almost no insect activity. Well, you're not going after the adults. You're going after the eggs that they leave behind, and they are going to be there for a long time. All right, somebody's posting lots of spiders on plants. Now, what do I do? Do I wash them off? Yeah, you got to wash them off. Just wash them off. That'll be all right. How easy is it to transplant a clipping of a banana plant? Well, you need the actual plant. You can't plant the bananas. The bananas themselves, doesn't work that way. So these are all done by propagation. There's no banana seeds, even though if you look inside a banana, you'll see a bunch of seeds. Doesn't work that way. You do have to take the plant, just get a clump of it, take it and stick it in the ground. It'll work. It's kind of like we were talking about with the birds of paradise. Same thing. You would dig the plant up. You could really just pull the plant apart. You get a little bit of root. You get a little bit of plant. You plant that. You're just fine. As well as agapanthus, morea, fortnight lily. These are all plants. You can do the same thing as the banana plant. It's just the banana plant is giganormous. All right. This is Nick Federoff. You've been listening to this hour of the program, brought to you by a whole bunch of different people. Don't forget to go to agrothrive.com to get your free sample of their fertilizer. Of course, look at the details and fill the information out, and you can get your plant started off to a really good start. All right, I'm Nick Federoff, and remember, green side